All right, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I am here with Rashel Hariri, who is with Shopify, Senior Manager, Ecosystem Social. Thanks so much for being with us here today, Rashel.
Thanks for having me, and hi to all your students. I'm looking forward to chatting about social media.
Excellent, thank you. So, Rashel, as we get started, I would love to hear a little bit about your background. What is ecosystem social mean for Shopify, and what did you do before you joined Shopify?
Sure. So I'll start with what does ecosystem mean? So Shopify is a platform, and part of that ecosystem involves working with app partners and agencies who build on top of our platform. So you can think about Shopify providing the foundation for merchants to start their businesses, and what our partners that are part of the ecosystem do is they create apps and they build on top of that. So you can get a store, and then you can download a bunch of different apps. You can work with agencies to make your business more successful. And so I manage the social strategy and the social plans and digital marketing for the ecosystem specifically.
That's great. Okay, That's fascinating. And what were you doing before you joined Shopify?
Yeah, so before Shopify, actually, I'll take a few steps further back. So I graduated from Ryerson University with a Bachelor of Commerce in 2009. And right after school, I started working for a social enterprise. So it was like half nonprofit, half for profit. And I worked there for about a year, and then I transitioned and moved into ING Direct at the time, and now it's Tangerine Bank. And with my first job, fresh out of university, I did a bunch of all the things that they needed. It was a small group of us, like maybe 15 people. And so I did trade shows, all sorts of events, communications, working on their website, all their social media. And from there, I decided, okay, I should go into the social media field. And this was about 11 years ago. So 11 years ago, going into social media, to be honest, I was like, is this gonna be a real job? Like, are we gonna be done with social media in a few years, and I'm gonna have to look for something else to do in marketing? But I've had no regrets ever since, because going the digital route is actually like the best decision that I've made. So fresh out of that job that I was in for just under a year, I went and worked for the bank for about 4 years, and I helped to build the social practice there, and creating what the brand playbook would look like for social media, integrating social media into different areas of the business. And then the last thing I did was help with leading the charge for our social campaign when we had the brand change, when we went from ING to Tangerine. And then right after that, I joined McDonald's and was also there for about 4.5 years. And I was on the digital team, and really I was championing digital and social marketing for McDonald's. When I had first joined, there wasn't a digital team or a digital department. They were very focused on traditional marketing, think TV, radio, billboards. And so once I joined, I actually joined under the communications team, but then there was an opportunity in digital. The company was having a full digital transformation. So again, perfect timing. And I got to help champion that for about 4.5 years and work on some really amazing programs and help build out the social practice at McDonald's. And then from there, an opportunity came up at Shopify. So I joined Shopify as a social strategy lead. And then I was working with our merchants. So a lot of storytelling of how to start a business on Shopify. From there, I transitioned into the ecosystem team, and that's where I am now.
That's great. That's fabulous. I mean, working for McDonald's, I'm a big fan of, Big Macs, McChickens, nuggets, fries. I mean, really anything.
Yeah, so am I. It's great.
A lot of people are ashamed to admit stuff like that, but I like to just approach my passion for McDonald's honestly,
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I still have, I think, some of my business cards around here where it's literally a Big Mac, and it has my info. And whenever I would give my business card to people, they would get a free Big Mac. And so that was a big conversation starter at the time.
I think I maybe mentioned to you in one of my messages, my dad was one of the early first McDonald's owners in Western Canada. And so I actually have, as my notepad, his letterhead from the 80s that I use as my notepad, because he has, I don't know, he always kept it. And I was like, well, we should just start using this stuff up. So we're a little bit retro here.
Very vintage. I love that.
So I'd love to talk to you today about managing customers. So you're, I guess, primarily working in the B2B world. Is that right?
Right now, yes. Yeah.
So how should companies treat questions or requests on social media when you're dealing with customers like you are now in your current job, or maybe when you were working with McDonald's or ING?
Yeah. I'd say there's a bit of difference between B2B and the B2C side. I'll start with the let's talk about like some things overall that I think are important for brands and businesses to do. I think first of all, it's important to have a dedicated handle just for your customer care and customer support. That way, if there's any issues on any communications that you send your customers once they've made a purchase, you can say like, if you have any questions, reach out to us here.
Right.
And you're directing all of that type of conversation that you may not necessarily want on your brand channels, direct it to a different space and have a dedicated team that's there and set up and ready to respond, and ensure you have the right SLAs. So your service level agreement is it that team has to respond to any inquiries within an hour, within 15 minutes. Having that differentiation actually provides a better experience for your customers, even whether it's B2B or B2C. Regardless, it's helpful. Most brands have actually gone that route. Of course, if you are like just starting a company, you're quite small, your demand isn't as high, you could probably manage it all through one channel, but the recommendation really is to split the two, and then create systems in the back end that measure all of the types of inquiries, questions, complaints you're getting, and ensure you have a feedback loop in place to give all of that information back to your product teams, your sales teams, etc.
Do you think that there's a specific channel or, specific social network that's best for handling those types of conversations? Is Instagram better than Twitter or Facebook or whichever?
I actually find that Facebook and Twitter are probably the most streamlined in terms of managing customer care, and their API connections are really great. So another recommendation there is always using a third-party platform. So I know you guys are in Vancouver, so Hootsuite, or you could use Sprinkler or Spreadfast, or there's a whole suite of different tools that you can use to manage your customer care. But I would say that looking for the platforms that have the best API integration. I know using Instagram has been a challenge in the past, although there is a ton of conversation that happens on that platform, and it just depends on your brand. If you're a D2C brand and you have products that you're selling to consumer, Instagram is a great place. TikTok is also becoming a great place. In terms of customer service, though, I think those two are probably a bit more challenging.
Yeah. And so what do you do if, let's say Instagram is your primary channel and you are selling product on there, like you just referenced, you're a B2C brand, and you do start getting inquiries and maybe they're of the negative nature. How do you handle something like that?
Yeah, I think what's always helpful is having a strict FAQ document to understand whoever's managing that portion of your conversations, whether it's a community manager or someone who's specific to like social care, ensuring that they have the FAQs across the board and they're set up for success. Because the biggest thing is the most important thing is making sure that you respond to your consumers very quickly. You don't want them waiting for days. I've seen stats on certain brands that have waited on Facebook like 5 days to respond to someone with an issue. It's a very negative experience, and consumers these days want to reply right away. So I'd say ensure that you have an up-to-date FAQ. If you're having a product launch or anything in particular, have that ready for your team. And then that way they're armed and empowered with the correct information. They can quickly respond, hopefully ensuring that you don't have a fire hose of complaints or issues that are coming at them. Then they can adequately take that person aside, work through the issue with them, whether they continue to keep it within the platform on Instagram, if it's a low-level problem, or if it's a bigger issue that needs to be moved to email so that there's proper tracking and recording.
Yeah, that's good. I would say like one of the biggest issues I personally have with brands and social media is just the lack of response. The question that never ever gets answered. Why do you think that's such a prolific problem with brands? Or maybe you see it differently.
I've actually had really great experiences when I've had customer care issues and I've reached out to brands. I've never actually reached out and not received a response, but it could be just based on the organizations I was reaching out to, they had a better setup. I think the ones where you don't hear back from them, to be honest, is having been on the client side, they probably don't have enough resources. They don't have a team set up. They don't have FAQs. And oftentimes what happens is organizations don't realize the amount of work that being a community manager and the amount of time it takes. And so they may assign one person and say, okay, you are going to be responsible for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. And you have this one person who's trying to manage it all. And especially if you are a smaller organization and you don't give that community manager care or like support backup,
Yep.
that's a lot of the reason why. Oftentimes they just don't have the bandwidth, and so you don't get a response. And I think that's what's really important as part of our conversation today, is making sure that organizations are set up for this, because no longer do people prefer email or telephone over social media. If I have a complaint, I go straight on Twitter or straight to that to their social profile and message them. And so I think companies that are still thinking very traditional of how they manage their customer care need to reshape the way they're thinking about it and resource their team and their staff appropriately.
That's great. That's really good. So what are the potentials for social media as a customer service tool, dealing with not necessarily always complaints, but questions as well?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, in this day and age, consumers are buying a brand, and they're buying all of it. And that also includes when they reach out to you because they like your content, and so they leave a comment for you, or they have a question about a product they purchase. So I think the potential is massive. And in this day and age, if you have a product or a business, it's good to nurture your customers through social media. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're only strengthening your brand. You're building a community around your product, your brand, your persona, whatever it is that you're building, depends like what type of business you are. And so it's imperative for you to be paying attention to these people, because it's not anymore that you have like trolls or people just messaging you for no reason. I mean, you're on social media to serve a purpose, and the value that you're giving your customers is that two-way dialogue and interaction. And so I think that is the potential that organizations need to tap into more, is understanding like, when I actually get positive feedback, negative feedback, whatever type of feedback, what am I doing with that? And then how am I servicing my customers? And then how am I, in an intelligent way, bringing those insights back to the company, to our corporation, to our small startup, to ensure that we're setting up ourselves for success. Like, the worst thing you can do is get a bunch of great feedback or bad feedback, and then it stops at your customer care or your community manager. There needs to be a two-way flow. Right.
Do you think that, or what are your thoughts on, you get a bunch of negative comments about maybe a new product release, people hate it, whatever, there's technical issues. What are your thoughts on deleting that versus deleting those comments, turning comments off, things like that, versus maybe a different approach of dealing with each one of those customers?
Yeah, I'm all about transparency. So I would never recommend trying to delete anything. I mean, unless someone's trolling you, and we've had instances like that. And I think it's just even before getting started, understanding what your community guidelines are. Like, at what point do you decide someone's just trolling you, or when is there a legitimate concern? Because we see that, we see both quite often. So definitely be transparent. Don't delete the comments. That's the worst thing you can do, because people screenshot, then they'll post a screenshot and say, did you notice like X company deleted this person's comment? And then that can blow up into like a PR issue. So I always say, take the time to understand and be empathetic. Like, if someone has a concern or an issue, or they're pissed off, it could be that they've called your customer care line, they've sent you an email, and now they're resorting to social media, and you just happen to get like the most negative response from them. But you have to be empathetic and say, hey, did you reach out to us before? Let me look into your account. Let's see what's going on. Be human, essentially.
Yeah, I guess the humanizing aspect is really important, because that's what that's one of the reasons we're on social media, is for connection. At some level, and connection is a human thing. It's a human instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. What
are your thoughts on building relationships through social media with our customers?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important. A great way, or like a great tool, is understanding who are your advocates, or your key fans, who are your top buyers, and ensuring that, anybody who's a community manager can tell every time they post something. There's certain people that always reply. There's certain people on Twitter that are always engaging with your brand and chatting with you. And the great thing about that is you can pull them into an ambassador type of program, or if you have people that are really interested in your tech product, ask them if they want to get, a beta version in the future if you're launching a new product. There's a lot of ways to integrate what you're seeing in social conversations to help you with higher level strategic thinking, crowdsourcing information. I would say that the potential is is massive, but you have to look at your organization and understand what the needs are. And then ensure that you're using social and the social response and conversations and engagement in a way that's going to help you gather information that helps not only serve your customers, but make your business better.
Right. That's great. I like that, the idea, especially of using those customers and working with those really keen customers or those on social media for a beta product or something like that. Because I guess they love you, and they may be more forgiving than a customer who doesn't view you in the same way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have instances too, and we're like, oh, we just launched this product. We're gonna hear from Frank. He's gonna tweet. Get ready. But I think that's a good thing, because then who's in your community, and like you said, understand who those people are, because they could be very influential as well, right? Like they oftentimes within their own sphere of influence, they have a whole group of people that are listening to what they're saying, and so. You want to bring them in, you want to befriend them. Like that's the purpose of social. I used to always say when I was at McDonald's, like social media is not a billboard, it's a dialogue. And so you can't expect to just post things and be like, right, we're not answering. We're not here for that. We just want to like publish, put our ads into market, but we're not going to help you. So that's key.
I guess that's the difference between an audience versus a community. Yeah. If it's an audience, I mean, they'll just look at your billboard. But if it's a community, there needs to be some type of conversation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or else, I mean, then it's not really a community, is it?
Yeah, and that's actually a good point that you make right there, because oftentimes if you're not resourcing and staffing up, then you're not actually building these communities, and you're not utilizing social media in the best way possible. So what you end up doing is creating content calendars and building like these lofty plans of what you want to do with your social channels. But if it just stops there and you've not set up your team to respond properly, you're missing half of social and half of what you could be doing.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great. Rashel, I think this has been an awesome conversation, really, really helpful and insightful for us to get a good understanding of how do we deal with customers on our social channels, whether it's B2B or B2C, and some of the relationship opportunities that we have to build there. Thanks so much for being with us here today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you.